Hello, everybody. My name is Jorrel, joined as always by my co-founder, Mr. Timothy Karambat, and we are the co-founders of Mintplex, formerly known as Ramp PP, Ramp Papa.
Ramp with two P's. Yeah.
Ramp with two P's. And this is number 13, episode 13 of the Mintplexity podcast.
Wait, is it 14?
No, 13.
The last one was. Is it really?
Yeah. 100%. We made a joke.
Okay, I'm tripping.
We made a joke last one, like the baker's dozen,
Oh.
It would have been 14 if I was here last week, but I was away in the mythical land of Lisbon, Portugal. So
maybe I just talked to myself for an hour last week then and just thought that that'd be a podcast.
Hey, man.
I just default. It's like NPC mode. I just pop up here and I just start talking.
You had enough calls last week to make up for a whole season of a podcast. So
that's true.
I don't blame you on that front. But yes, this is episode 13. There's quite a lot I missed last week, hilariously enough.
A ton.
I was like, for listeners out there, 1 week in Web3 or tech world is like a full ass year. So Tim has aged double because 50% of the company was gone.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like Inception when they land on the water planet. It's like, that's exactly how it works. If you leave the water planet, it'll be like 50 years. For me, it's been a week.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I left you all there by yourself. And you're just like, oh, help me, product, kill me, product support. And it just so happened that literally the Monday I was gone was probably the worst day I've ever seen for intercom messages. I woke up on a Monday, Sunday, Monday, right? Because Sunday we don't really triage those product support questions, right? And Monday I wake up and there's 15 messages and I'm 8 hours ahead and I was like, oh shoot, good luck, Tim. It's oh man, dude, good luck, bro.
Oh well.
But anyways, I'm glad to be back. We definitely had a busy week this week, which has been great. But in this episode of the podcast, we'd love to talk about a few really relevant things that came about. One being a launch that happened last week, done by I forgot what the guy's name is,
Jack Butcher.
Jack Butcher, and he launched this thing called Checks, which has a pretty interesting implementation. It was done through the Zora protocol. And we'll dive into that a little bit first. And then second, we're going to talk a little bit about the SEC crackdown of Kraken. Kraken on Kraken.
And, you just come up with that all yourself, or did you write that in your dream journal last night and you were like, oh, I'm going to tell that joke on the podcast?
No, this totally plagiarized. This is something you said about an hour before we recorded this podcast. I'm just kidding.
That's why it sounds familiar.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, we are going to be diving into just a little bit just to talk about it since it's highly relevant. And once again, one of our earliest conversations about why we're so adamant against staking. This is one of those biggest reasons why.
I feel like we are just the anti-staking podcast at this point. We're anti-Solana and anti-staking podcast.
Hey, brother. Hey, we stick to our first principles, and so far it's done us well. All right,
anti-Solana is a first principle,
and then finally we'll do some updates on MintFoundry and some of the transitions we've made with the free tooling that we've moved over from Mintplex, as well as some of the new features that we've added to MintFoundry, and a little teaser, which I'm super excited for, unlockable content, which is on the horizon. Which is just, oh man, I've been waiting for this moment for a whole last year. I remember bothering Justin from Pinata about the submarine stuff because I was like, dude, I really want unlockable stuff. And the fact that we're now doing it a year later.
It's I mean, you have to be in the right position, I guess, of the market to build it to where it makes sense. If we offered it inside of Mintplex, it wouldn't make any sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But with that, let's dive straight into the first topic, which is Jack Butcher's Checks launch, which I don't know, all of a sudden it just came out of nowhere. I was just, a friend of mine told me, hey, this is so cool.
They all come out of nowhere, right? They're do we ever really know where they come from? They're hardly ever highly anticipated and they work out. I mean, the last highly anticipated mint that I recall that had so much hype was Mecca. like Mechaverse, which was horrible. That ended horribly. Which I guess goes to show you just, can't have French people running an NFT project or something. I don't know why. It just didn't go well. Now the floor price is like 0.2. I think it went up to like 20 something.
I think that's coming from a personal place, Tim.
I was burned. Yeah. So I was burned. I'm still mad about it.
Yeah. It's still a little bitter, still holding a grudge. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. I found it's easier to work on the launchpad and make tools for people to be able to present opportunities for people who are bad at trading like me to lose money. So that's that's the underlying principle of Mintplex.
Hey, at least you're really clear about where value is derived.
From me. That's where it comes from.
It's like you're making someone rich. It's just not you.
Yeah, it's just not me. Yeah. So anyway, Jack Butcher's project. Like, I feel okay. God, this is so okay. The people that have like touted it as like innovative honestly hurts me like at a personal level, because it is, I cannot like, I am not trying to shit on the project or the art or any of the effort that went into it. I am just simply trying to say this is not innovation. Like, if this is what innovation looks like in crypto or NFTs, we have a long way to go. These are simply JPEGs. Can you update them? Yes, but you've always been able to update the base token URI of tokens, which, by the way, with Zora cost gas. Like, we saw that they have that renderer contract because, Zora, everything's on chain. And like, since that contract has been around, the renderer contract, I think people have spent like, what was it? Like $1,600 in just gas updating either the image or the description. Whereas like if they were using MintFoundry, it'd be free show right there. But like, as far as like the project goes, like, do I think it's a cool piece of art? Yes. Do I think that it would have been successful if somebody who didn't have 200,000 followers on Twitter would have done it? Absolutely fucking not. Nobody would have cared. Because, well, I mean, we've talked about this before. When it comes to NFTs, like the number one thing is marketing and distribution.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is at the end of the day, he leveraged his brand presence and he leveraged his work as an artist, because he's first and foremost an artist. I mean, you just have to look at like visualized value. You look at some of his one-of-ones. Like, this guy is an artist, and he leveraged his whole kind of network as well as the hype, and he did something different. Right? Yeah,
he's not a charlatan. I just don't think it's innovation. I think it's just another generative collection.
Yeah. And honestly, it's hilarious to me because you know that some sort of drop has happened or some sort of big hype, because we'll get into our product questions. They'll be like, hey, how does open editions work? Do you guys do open editions? All this. And we're like, where's this coming from? And then it's like, oh, that's because Chex did an open edition and people minted 16,031 tokens from his project.
Yep.
And then they capped supply at 16,031. And once again, it's hilarious to me that people just love to follow the trends and the hype cycles, because everybody who follows those, they can't capitalize on it. Like, who else is going to have another open edition? Like, probably very little,
And the thing is that it's not like replicating the recipe, right? It's like when you go to a fancy restaurant, like you can have all the tools and all the equipment and all the recipe, but that doesn't make the plate worth that much. It's usually the person who's doing it, the chef, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just, and we see that a lot. If a popular project pops off, we see people follow along and be like, oh, if I just do pretty much the exact same steps, I'll get the exact same results. And that's not what the secret was. The secret was actually their distribution, which is the one thing you can't copy. Mm-hmm. But at least we make it easy to copy the technical parts. It makes it to where they don't have to spend 20K on a dev, but I mean, that's as most we can offer. We can't offer their distribution channel. We don't have that. So, and also like, that's not what we are. We're not a marketing company.
No. I mean, and that's the whole thing with like these successful launches. It's like people are so hyper fixated on the functionality instead of looking at why was this inevitably going to be a success. And it was inevitably going to be a success because combined between his two accounts, he has over 500, 600,000 followers and high quality followers. So he knew
we're interested in his art. We're interested in his art. Like,
exactly.
That's why it succeeded. but it wasn't innovative. Like it was just an art project.
Yes. And secondarily, right. So we're talking about open editions and how he leveraged that. But another thing that a lot of people are focusing on and are like super impressed about is metadata, because he can do all these things where like every other day or something, he'll change the images of people's NFTs and it'll be something else. It'll be like the US flag, or it'll be, a question mark. It'll be all these different things. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. He's changing, it's transforming, it's all that stuff. And it's like,
that has been possible forever.
That's always been possible with like,
and the way that he's doing it is actually the most expensive way to do it, possibly. It's like, it is literally the most expensive way to do it. Like every time they have to execute a transformation on an NFT, they are paying gas. And the gas fee, I mean, we saw like the gas fees anywhere from like $8 to $10 just to update the image or the description because of how the Zora protocol works, which Zora protocol is great. But because everything's on chain, you wind up paying for every little thing. That's the trade-off that you get. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, I feel like if your intention was to constantly mutate the art, you maybe could have looked at another solution that wouldn't have cost you, $10 gas every time you wanted to change it.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the thing is for somebody who has such a successful project like that, like $10 of gas is just nothing. But like,
it's nothing, completely nothing.
If you're a lesser known brand or a lesser known presence and you want to emulate the same thing, like that is not a cheap process of constantly
it's
trying
also
to
clunky.
Update.
Anytime
Absolutely.
you have to do that is clunky. Like you have the opportunity to mess it up, Like that's also like, I mean, a shilling again. That's why we built MintFoundry. So you can have a dynamic collection just like checks, but you don't have to pay for gas. You just plug this simple URL in and it just works. You update it through a UI. It's like literally updating like, a spreadsheet or uploading a file to Google Drive. Like it's that simple. And so it's like, that's why we built that. That's why it makes perfect sense to use it right there. Because I can tell you what, if you had 16,000 tokens that you had to update at any kind of interval, that would be very expensive.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing. When we talk about what is the value proposition of these types of projects, right? You have to think, how much money am I spending and how much value are my holders going to be getting out of it, right?
Yeah.
And once again, if you have a presence like his, it's marginal. But if you're like a community of 300 and you're trying to do that stuff, like they better be pumping your floor price. They better be trading often, because, if you're trying to change 300 tokens at any given time and it's costing you like $10, $20, $30.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Also,
that's a lot.
The funnier part of that entire story isn't the fact that a well-known artist got paid for art that they made. Like that's just pretty typical. The funnier part is someone made a derivative and made more money off of that mint than the original project, which is like the most Web3 thing I can think of. Like that is just so definitively NFT. Like I like nothing gets more NFT than that. Is a popular project, someone makes a derivative and the derivative makes more money than the original. It's incredible.
Yep. That is very Web3 in its purest form. But hey, in his defense, his secondary volume is absolutely insane.
It's probably nuts. It's probably nuts.
So that derivative project is definitely not going to get the long sustaining royalties that.
Oh, absolutely no. That's the downside. Yeah, no, that's the downside of the derivatives. But the person who wind up making the money on the mint, I guess they're going to use most of that mint money for updating their token URI, I guess. And then who knows where the derivative will go. I don't know why people do that sometimes. Try to like make a derivative and try to build a community off a derivative. It's like sometimes it works, but most times it doesn't. Like where did all the 0x projects go? Which that was like last year in like March, where people were doing like CryptoPunks extensions, Bored Ape extensions, and they're just reshuffling the traits. Like where did those spin-off derivative communities go? I don't know any of them that are still, actively participating in the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just because the people, the greater fool theory, right? Like,
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, it'd just be great if these people were trying to build something that was other than just trading on the price and actually making something unique, So,
yeah, well, that'll always be the case. as we've established the other day, we're always going to have those folks that are in it for the flips.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, but speaking of things that'll always be around, the constant questions around staking is always going to be around. But the SEC made an arbitrary decision with Kraken, yesterday? I feel like it was like yesterday or 2 days ago. Is it crazy?
It was this week for sure.
Yeah, and it was specifically around Kraken's whole staking as a service offering. But could you explain it a bit more, Tim, just for listeners out there who isn't caught up?
So Kraken is an exchange, much like Coinbase, but they are not a publicly traded company. They're a privately held company. And one of the features that Kraken offers, aside from buying and selling tokens and, pretty much doing what Coinbase does, they also offer a staking as a service. They also offer a whole bunch of other tools that Coinbase doesn't offer. I actually prefer Kraken over Coinbase. Which is why this is also really annoying, because they are a private company and the SEC is just going to be like, okay, I'm just going to pursue you anyway because you're just on the radar of crypto, right? They are US based. They have to comply by US regulatory laws, and their staking as a service came under the purview of the SEC, and without any kind of prior warning or a letter or anything like that, they have decided to, file a complaint for securities violation, or it's not even a complaint. They're going to charge them with a securities violation for their staking as a service, saying that it violates U.S. securities law. Meanwhile, Tether posted, what was it, like a 10 million or like $1 billion profit, which Tether, by the way, is an offshore, that's an offshore stable token that most people probably know about. They are just doing, like, everybody is a suspect of Tether at this point, to whether they have actual money to back up their USD peg token or not, which everybody knows is probably not the case, but you can't prove it because the US doesn't have the purview to kind of get anything more, get an audit out of them. So so Kraken now has to deal with the SEC, which is going to be probably a shit ton of red tape, and also be probably a net loss for the space. But I think what is going to happen is, if this all shakes out and Kraken does get charged with this securities violation, they'll have to pay a probably pretty substantial fine. But the side effect of that is going to be that any US resident who is probably using a staking service or is participating in staking is also at a retail level violating securities law, which would make you also liable for that felony. I think that is what the downstream effect of that becomes. I'm not a lawyer, and there may be lawyers that listen to this and be like, oh, no, it won't be that serious or anything. And that'd be great. I'm just saying that the worst case, I think, is Kraken gets charged. Everything winds up shaking out in the SEC's favor, which, it's the SEC, so probably. And then downstream effect is everybody who is participating in staking, facilitating staking, or using staking, and are a U.S. resident or company, you will be violating securities law. Kind of opens the door to a lot more, a lot more punishment.
Mm-hmm. The biggest kind of downside to all of this is, as much as we're fervently against staking as a service, it does limit, especially when you introduce any type of regulatory or guidelines, it does now limit what people will want to do in regards to ERC20s. And ERC20s, especially in the format that we like using them, are really good rewards to people,
the social tokens.
Who want to participate in communities and stuff like that. And they don't need to have inherent value, but now we're adding, with this regulations and whatnot, we're adding that whole level of gray area that even if you aren't using it for, value, what's the word for it? Value storing or consistent gains, you could fall under a securities violation just because you have an ERC20.
Yeah, who knows? Right? Who knows how far the actual rule might go? And the biggest kind of stupid part about all of this is that like when we speak to our lawyers, or like when you see those public tweets by Brian Armstrong, like the SEC is clearly very bad at giving any clear direction as to what is and what isn't allowed. They will not give any clear actual law. They'll just be like, oh, we interpret it as this, and so that now we're going to charge you with securities violation. And it's like, how is any company or person supposed to navigate this space when they have the fear of the SEC might just be like, oh, hey, like we're coming after you now, no warning. And it's like, you didn't even know you were breaking the law, but it turns out you are because we thought you were. It's like, how can you do that? They're pretty much interpreting the law ad hoc, as determining on whatever it is that they're trying to do. I just find it a little ridiculous, but I'm not a lawyer. So maybe, I'm missing a lot of context. That kind of puts the whole thing in much more color. But yeah, I don't get it. I think it's kind of stupid, and I think it's just a net negative.
Yeah, I mean, so any lawyers out there, if you listen to our podcast, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this SEC ruling. There's a lot of things I feel like that are coming this year regarding crypto that will be very transformative for the space, no matter what part of crypto you're in, whether you're in NFTs, Web3, or the general cryptocurrency.
Staking is most certainly in that bucket of things that will be transformed.
Absolutely. Well, next, I mean, we won't beat that. We won't beat that topic too much. There's still a lot of spec on that end, but we'll see how things play out as we go through each episode of this podcast. Yeah. But the last thing, right, as always in these podcasts, we have always spicy Mintplex news. Okay. We have officially moved all of the Mintplex free tools. Well, aside from the OS bulk image updater.
Yeah, that's just going to stay there.
Yeah, it's just going to stay there. I mean, that's contract related. But we have moved the metadata creator to MintFoundry officially. Now, you'll find it on free tools section. I just did a video on how to use these free tools. I mean, it's almost identical to the Mintplex free tools, except you have checks now. So
there's a lot of like validation, so you can't accidentally mess it up anymore. We built those tools like very quickly. I think in the last video I said, we built them in like a hotel lobby during the YC event, and just to have them done. And now they're a lot more refined because we got a lot more people using them. So you can go and now create your metadata and pretty much like handle an entire collection generation right there. It's super easy tool to use. If you want something dynamic or you want cool stuff, then you can use MintFoundry. So
yes. Speaking of dynamic on MintFoundry, a couple of other updates on that end. You finally put together the bulk edits, right?
Oh yeah. I don't know. We're building it in real time. It's like we have people using it as we're updating it.
Yes. So now you can go in and update a good chunk of your tokens at a time. Once again, that allows you to do a few more things for your community. So there's definitely a lot of reasons to use MintFoundry now. But I think the most exciting piece that we'd love to tease on this podcast is the unlockable content.
Yes.
All right, Tim, what is it?
So if you're using OpenSea's like upload your token kind of deal, like how they've always had the lazy minting feature. They've always had this option when you're creating a token. And for those of you who have done this, what I'm talking about, where you can add unlockable content. Now, if you have a private collection, and by private, I mean like you went to a launch pad and launched your own contract, which is unequivocally the best way to actually do a generative collection, regardless of who you use. You cannot use OpenSea's unlockable content. The way this looks is when you view a token on OpenSea, there's usually a little button near it that says unlockable content. And the person who holds the token could click on it and get something. It's usually an image. That's actually, I think, the only asset that they allow you to do is just an additional image. But unlockable content is something that is a great low-hanging fruit for collection owners to offer to holders. Like, example, you have a rare token. It comes with unlockable content that maybe includes a message from you and also a link to a high-res image of the asset and all of these other things that only the holder can get access to that info. It is annoying, and I do not know why this is possible. OpenSea does not support unlockable content from custom collections, and there is no API to make that button appear and associate the two. Why? I have no idea why. It doesn't make any sense why they don't do that. It is completely baffling. Also, other marketplaces don't support unlockable content, like Rarible and LooksRare. So what we have done is built unlockable content into the NFT itself. So now, regardless of marketplace, people who own the token or people who don't will see that there is unlockable content associated with it, can click a link, go through the ownership validation process as if they would on anywhere else, and then get access to the special information that you would get, that you want only the token owner to have. And you can, of course, set this up on the fly, change it at any time and all that other stuff because you have a dynamic collection. And so that is what unlockable content is. It's pretty cool. So you can actually find your rare tokens and make them even rarer by adding special content to them.
I mean, just imagine, right? Like people are like, oh, I need to airdrop something to my, to my holders, or like, oh, I need to, reward them somehow. Like you can literally without having to make a new token or without having to create a new NFT and drop it to your folks, you can just say, hey, you go to your Discord and you're like, hey, go to the metadata, go into your NFT, go into OpenSea, look at your metadata, find this link, or, you could even share the link. And it's like anyone who owns this NFT, boom. It's like,
and it pops up on the token on OpenSea too. Also, like it's in the description, says unlockable content. You can just click the link, or you can have it as an attribute on the token if you want it to appear as an actual trait. But yeah, like that's the kind of stuff that we want to do. It's annoying that OpenSea doesn't make it easy for people to add custom unlockable content, but here we are. So it's just weird that it's not something that's in the metadata, like where you can just add a special field and that's unlockable now. But with this, you can lock multiple things at once. With OpenSea, you can only lock just an image, a single image. But with us, you'll be able to do text, links, arbitrary files, images, and videos. So anything you want, anything that's special about your project, you can put it there.
And that is just beautiful. It is. It will. Once again, I've been so excited to do this since all the way back when we started working with Pinata and Typesheet. So almost in the beginning, I was like, Submarine, which is Pinata's version of this type of thing, the whole like locking URLs, geo-locking, all that stuff.
Theirs is much more comprehensive. Absolutely.
Way more comprehensive.
Ours is native to the NFT.
Yeah, so. And that's the point, right? Is like for us, we want to focus on that part. But then they can lock everything. Like anything and everything is lockable with their Submarine feature.
They also have a whole bunch of very unique locks. Like you can pay to unlock, geo-lock, all this other stuff. So there's still two separate products. But if you want one that's inside the NFT, then you can use MintFoundry solution. If you need something comprehensive at a community level to lock, then you can use Submarine.
Yes. So, but that is the main updates though for MintFoundry. You'll see some videos and tutorials on Unlockables once it is live, and we're super excited for that end of things. On the Mintplex end, we've been getting a lot more usage for the redemption stuff. So if you haven't tested that out yet, redemption is live. We haven't actually put out any tutorials or videos on that stuff. So stop asking. Stop asking about it in Intercom. We will have those live soon. But is there anything else, Tim, we want to say to listeners out there to round out this podcast?
I mean, besides the usual, like test on testnet. I don't think there's anything else. That should be all the highlights.
Awesome. Well, as always, Tim, thank you so much for your time on the Mintplexity podcast every week, every Friday. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on all of our socials, Mintplex NFT or Mintplex. And if you found this podcast, you're already on our YouTube, so check out all of our tutorials, our content, and we will see you guys in the next one. Happy building.